morning, good afternoon. Sorry for the technical difficulties or the confusion this afternoon or morning. It's great to be with y'all this holiday week. I know some people are traveling. Don't worry, this is being recorded. Obviously, if you're watching it right now, you're watching the recording. So we're going to get started, move right in, and then we'll take questions at the end. Bailey will be monitoring the chat box. So if there's something that you want to ask along the way and she can answer it, we'll do that as well. So thank you, Bailey. This is Advocacy 103, Advocating and Understanding NAWBO's Position. So we've had a session on Congress. We've had a session on the administration. Now we're going to kind of see how NAWBO weaves through both of those processes and inserts our thoughts and how we feel about legislation, and also communicates what our women business owners need throughout this process. So if you look at this diagram on your screen, you're going to see where NAWBO in the legislative process, it's a little different than what's going to happen in the regulatory process. So in this legislative process, NAWBO has an idea, a concern. The first step of what we do, and we'll get into this later, but it's also part of our litmus test, is we look for a coalition of groups or other member organizations, groups that are going to advocate on this same issue with us. Then we take that information together and we go to Hill offices and we say, hey, this is a concern that we have. Let's use the micro business definition that we've been talking about, that we've been advocating for. So we go to other groups and organizations and we say, hey, NAWBO's realized that we need to look at forming a micro business definition across the federal government. We believe this would be something that would advance women business owners as well as all business owners, because we know that the government's defining small as 500 or less. And we know that micro businesses are the majority of businesses. And if we give them the support that they need, allow them access to capital, and put like a specific funding amount that goes to micro businesses. If we look at procurement, and if there was a procurement goal for micro businesses, we know that this would advance the U.S. economy. So then we take that information, we go as a group, we go to Capitol Hill, and we tell members of Congress, this is something that we need. Then we need to find a Republican and a Democrat that agree with us, that say, you know what, we're in agreement. We want to work with you. We're going to draft a bill. They draft a bill. They introduce the bill in either the House or the Senate. And what we would like to do is have it going in tandem. Like, we're working with people in the House, we're working with people in the Senate. So we can get a matching bill in both houses. It just moves faster. The bill is introduced. And then, like we learned in the Advocacy 101 session with the clerk, it will then get sent from the speaker to a committee and subcommittee to discuss that bill that's been introduced. Now, what we do as an organization, when we know what subcommittee it's been sent to, we then work with the subcommittee and we work with them and we say, listen, this is something that you need to mark up. This is something that we need to move. This is needed right now. The subcommittee marks it up. Then the next step is, all right, now we need to go to leadership, because leadership's going to advance it to the floor. We're going to get action. That's when we're going to get to a vote. Does everybody see how that process works? All right, so that's the legislative process and how NAWBO is constantly having to talk and move things. Our job is to move it along. Like, just envision this like a little choo-choo train, and these are all little cars added on the choo-choo train. We're just kind of like trying to keep it moving that way. All right, next up. What do we do during the regulatory process? We can use an example, the independent contractor rulemaking. The final still hasn't come out, but we issued comments for the draft. So we know that this independent contractor rulemaking will have impact on women business owners. We know that women business owners, some of them are independent contractors themselves, or they utilize independent contractors. What we did is we went and we talked to other groups and organizations about what are they doing? How can we all work together? It was on one of the groups that we're members of is a small business roundtable. Sorry, guys, I blanked for a second. The small business roundtable, groups like this that we go to and we say, hey, this is an issue. Are y'all seeing it as an issue too? Are y'all going to be writing anything? We're going to be writing something. We would encourage everyone to write something. So we go and we build that coalition just like we did with legislation. But also at the same time, the administration releases their regulatory agenda every year. So we know that there's going to be these rules coming down the pike. We know what's coming, so we can kind of anticipate looking at it, looking for areas of concern, and then getting ready to then, as the next step, when the agency is drafting these rules, we then go to that regulating agency, to the Small Business Administration of Office of Advocacy, and we share our concerns. The reason why we go to both, or sometimes we utilize the SBA Office of Advocacy, is because the SBA Office of Advocacy's job is to be your voice in the regulatory system. So they're independent from the administration, which allows them, but they have a team of lawyers, and their job is to build relationships with the people in these agencies that are making the rules. So it's like DC, guys. It's politics. They've developed relationships. They work with these people on a daily basis, trying to fix these regulations. We may have an issue with an agency 1 year. We may not have an issue with that agency for 3 more years, but their portfolio is a specific agency. So they're T for tight, just like how we are with staff on the Hill. That is why we sometimes utilize those relationships, because what happens is they'll call me and they'll say, hey, what are women business owners saying? I want to use some quotes, or I want to, there's some data points that I want to put in our letter that will give it more meat and more oomph, for lack of a better word. So that's how we work with them. And then we also talk to the regulatory agency as well, the agency that's creating those regulations. Then the agency releases that final rule. That's when we also, after the draft rule, remember, that's when we send the comment letter. So we sent an extensive comment letter on the independent contractor rulemaking. It was either last year or the year before. Sorry, I don't have that committed to memory. Everything starts to blur together. But we sent one. And when we sent it, it just goes to show how long something takes to happen to get the final rule out, because we're still talking about it. And then NAWBO will then, once the rule comes out, we will inform you of how it will impact your business. So we can't obstruct, we can inform, we can help mold, but there's nothing that and there have been times where things have been withdrawn. But I'm just giving you an example. That's how the process works. And that's how we would, communicate and work with the agencies to try to make the best regulations possible, because once a law is created, a regulation is going to implement that law. So we know it's coming. Just how can we do the best work to inform them, to make them the most informed people while they're putting these in place? All right. I've gotten a lot of questions about this, but I want to walk through the litmus test with you guys on this, and really kind of delve into how NAWBO decides when we're going to get behind something. Because I think it's very important to understand that NAWBO doesn't willy-nilly support something just because one person came up to us and says something. It takes a lot of work. Your National Advocacy Committee runs all of the legislation that we're working on or looking at. They run it through this test on your behalf. Then it's taken to the board with the test run, so they know how all these benchmarks work. And then we decide, then the board has the vote of who, if it passes the litmus test, they have the final say on whether or not NAWBO will be supporting a piece of legislation. As you can see, for check marks, the bipartisanship test. So that means that a bill has a Republican and a Democrat on it. It is either co-sponsors or original co-sponsors. There's a distinction there. An original co-sponsor is someone that introduces the bill. Okay, so let's say a bill's introduced, it has 2 R's on it. It would be kicked off, no, would not pass the litmus test. Let's say we look at the legislation and we're like, man, this is actually pretty good. We agree with this. We think this should happen. It's our job to go find a Democrat, convince them that this is needed. Then if they come on as a co-sponsor later, it's past the bipartisanship test. So original co-sponsors or a co-sponsor later, both will fulfill that bipartisanship test. Coalition building. Talked a lot about this in the previous slides. We cannot go alone. We need to build a coalition to move legislation forward. We've got to talk to other people. We've got to talk to other small business organizations. We've got to talk to our partners. We've got to get people on board with us to make sure that we're not, while we are a very strong voice, we know that our voices are even stronger when we have other groups and organizations fighting the same fight. Data and expertise-driven initiatives. One of the reasons why I always say, please fill out your survey. It's because that's where we get a lot of data from. So if you don't fill it out, we don't know. So that is one of the ways that we definitely find what your business is, what's harming your business, what's hurting your business, how your business functions, which then if we're looking at policy, if you function a certain way, we know policy needs to function a certain way. That's a very big data point for us that's why those surveys are important. Another way that we look at data is we could look at scholarly data. We can look at data, economic data. So as long as it's scholarly data that is proven and has the credentials, then we will utilize that. But we're not just going to take 5 people have this opinion, so we're going to run with it. That's not data. That's not expertise driven enough. Business advancement. And I'm going to go through 2 pieces of legislation that kind of walks you through this, but I want you to know the 4 parts first. So, the last one, and then I'll take the question. The last one is business advancement. So a bill it has to advance both women and business. What I mean by that is a bill has to help a women business owner function more efficiently, advance them economically, do something that will provide and will allow a women business owner to work more positively, like in a positive manner, or advance them economically, like allow you to grow and scale. There has to be something that has to do with the woman and business. So NAWBO's lane is women and business, not women. All right. Question? Janedra? Or maybe
Yeah, sorry, hard to unmute. Is this litmus test done in any specific order, or do you arrange the pieces according to what's the best strategy? For example, my thought is that maybe in certain situations, the data and the expertise may need to be done first before you went to the bipartisanship test kind of thing. Does that make sense, my question?
Are you talking about bills that are already, like, if a bill's already in place, or are you talking about a bill that's in like the drafting phases?
I'm talking about more your process than the bill. Like, is the first place you typically go to the bipartisanship piece? Or do you go to the coalition building piece?
We
We're
go in all at
trying,
the same time.
okay, good. That's
So
helpful.
like
Thank
when
you.
you're looking at, so I'll get down to the nitty gritty. We have an Excel spreadsheet that has like the bill, what the bill does, and then we go through each thing. So like data, like things are written in, typed into bipartisanship test. Like we show who are the co-sponsors or original co-sponsors. Then you go to the next one, coalition building. These are the groups that we're working with. Then you go to like everything has to be put in all the columns. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So that's so we can work this concurrently. It's not one at a time.
Right.
Okay,
It's
thank
all
you.
done
That
at the same time. So
cool.
maybe you are looking at a piece of legislation, but you've only got data on it and you only know that it falls under the business and advancement. Well, then you know that you need to work on coalition building and bipartisanship test before you put NAWBO's name on it. Does that make sense? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out there is a piece of legislation. Will NAWBO be sending out a statement, releasing a press release, sending a letter to people on Capitol Hill that they should be supportive of this as well? Are we writing something similar to the process that I was talking about? Are we writing to the subcommittee or calling the subcommittee to say that they need to move on this? All of these things have to pass in order for us to be doing all of the advocacy work. Do you see what I'm saying? But sometimes let's say you've already got coalition building, you've already got data, you've already got business advancement, but you know that bipartisanship test isn't there yet. Well, then you got to go find an R&D and you're going to do that work and you're going to say, listen, NAWBO would love to be supportive of this legislation. We're really working hard to find a Democrat or a Republican that will also support this so we can send out a press release and really share how much we support this legislation. Because you can talk about how you agree with, there are sentiments in this piece of legislation that we think would be positive for women business owners, but we cannot put our formal support behind something until there's an R&D. Am I making myself clear? Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So I've got two different bills that I kind of wanted to walk through, and I'm looking at my time because I need to talk a little bit faster. Two bills that I think kind of help clarify how we go through this process. So the first one is the Small Business Taxpayer and Compliance Simplification Act. That's the one that we've been talking about this fall that would allow beauty salon spa owners to be on parity with restaurants with paying taxes on tips. The second bill looks at requiring private sector. It's the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. This was an older bill, but I think it helps really showcase the female aspect of bills. The bill would require private sector employees with 15 or more employees to make reasonable accommodations for pregnant employees, job applicants, everything in this. And as you can see on the slide. So let's delve into this. All right, look, this is what I told you was in that spreadsheet. Look, we went through, we found out who's in support in the House and the Senate. They've got Democrats and Republicans. Looks like it's gonna, check. Got the first part of the litmus test. And look, one of them is co-sponsors, one's original co-sponsors.
Elle, are you sharing a different screen at this moment?
No.
Okay. I thought you were looking at the Excel sheet. Okay. Because we didn't see it. We still see the other screen.
Oh no, I'm showing you what would be in the Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, got it.
So under the next one, This would be under what would be labeled coalition in the spreadsheet. NAWBO was asked to join this effort with the Professional Beauty Association. Under coalition building for the other one, NAWBO didn't receive any other inquiries from other small business organizations. So nobody's come to us and said, hey, we want to work on this with you. All right. So it's like, we would either need to do some coalition building, but let's see what else happens in this test and see if it's really under our purview. Whereas the first one, we've checked the box again. All right, a lot of types. This is the third one. So this is where we've looked at data. We've looked at scholarly data. We've looked at our data. We know that the beauty industry is expected to grow by 19%. And we know that if they could utilize this credit, they would reinvest it back into their businesses. It'll boost their retirement. It's good for the business owner. All right. The next one, research shows that many women have to decide between career or family. And women who work jobs in manual labor are forced to choose. This would make it easier on them. This would allow them to keep their careers and give them some more flexibility. This is something that would be good for women. All right, next slide. So that was the data behind each. That would have been under data under the Excel spreadsheet. All right, so this next one. Wait, did I just, sorry, there's more data. My screen isn't showing me the top. More data. Beauty, they're predominantly women and minority owned. They provide entry-level jobs, all these reasons of how that would propel women business owners. Okay. And with the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, we know that NAWBO supports women in the workforce, and we know that ensuring women don't have to choose between family and career, all of these things very important to NAWBO. But we know that NAWBO members with more than 15 employees would face regulatory burdens. And the cost of it would be for many detrimental to the business, unsustainable. So we're in this balance of, trying to figure out, okay, we know beauty keeps checking all these boxes. Now we're kind of seeing some issues and some concerns with the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. So that kind of shows you, and I'll go back to this one, where the first one was definitely women and business, propel women business owners forward, business advancement. That's the definition of business advancement. We know that for employees, it would be very helpful for women employees, but we know that the business advancement, it could hinder women business owners. So it's not going to provide that women business advancement that we want to see in that litmus test. So in the end, when we were putting this through, case 1 passed, case 2 did not. I wanted to throw out some other instances where we've received comments from members that are trying to understand, okay, how does NAWBO decide when it's not a piece of legislation? Maybe, it's something that comes out of the Supreme Court, or it's something that's happening with partners or previous partners. How do we decide when NAWBO takes a stand, uses our voice, and how do we decide, in some areas where, when we don't? In the instance of Roe versus Wade, this was something where we encouraged our members to use their individual voices because it was a social issue. It was something that we know our membership was on different sides. We're very cognizant of the fact that our women business owners come from many different viewpoints. And that is something that we encouraged everyone to share your own individual voice. Hello, Alice. Right now, a lot of organizations, specifically organizations that are working to try to advance specific demographic sectors, have come under legal attack. NAWBO is working with our coalition partners on how to move that forward. We've released a statement discussing how we support diverse women business owners, and we will continue to support a diverse women business owner economy because we know that when we support diverse business owners, that is what will move our economy forward. So we've continued to talk. We're continuing to provide we'll continue to provide you all resources, and we will continue to speak on behalf of women business owners to ensure that women business owners have the ability to continue to move our economy forward. All right. Does anybody have any questions? There's my email, big and blue. I'll hope to see everybody in Charlotte. Those are the dates, January 29th and 30th. Our sponsors. All right, I'm going to quit sharing my screen so we can have a dialogue. I wanted to try to leave time so people could ask questions. And if it's something that I need to take back and I don't want to get myself in trouble, I will let you know, but I'm hoping that I can answer everything. Does anybody have any questions, or did anything happen in the chat, Bailey, while I was?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Sean Skinner. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, NAWBO. And my question is, what about supporting individual candidates? How do you come to the conclusion that a candidate is worth NAWBO's support?
So in the past, NAWBO used to do an endorsement of candidates. We've stepped away from that simply because we no longer have a PAC. So a lot of times endorsements come with financial aspects. And there was a period where NAWBO felt like, where NAWBO believed that by doing endorsements, it would allow us to build camaraderie with an office if they won. And it was also a way to start engaging with people prior to them coming to Washington, D.C. We are fully confident now that NAWBO can build those relationships once they're in office. And we found that it's much more productive use of our time to look at the people that are in office and work with the people that are in office than spending lots of manpower looking at people who could potentially be in office. So NAWBO National has taken the stance that we no longer do an endorsement campaign. Does that help?
Yes, I'm glad to hear it, actually, because I was not in favor of endorsing certain candidates. I've been a member for a long time and also a member of public policy in Columbus for a long time. And I think that's a really good decision. I'm very happy to hear it. Thank you.
Oh, great. We always love to hear when people like things.
That actually stopped 2-3 years ago, right? I mean,
Mhm.
It's been a little while since we've done that.
Mhm.
Quite a number of years.
Does anybody else have any other questions? I know it was a lot to digest.
So there was one question in the chat from, it just says the personal development source on how many people have replied to DE&I thus far. I don't know if that person is still on the call and wanted to come off of mute just to clarify the question.
Oh, she's probably
well,
talking about D&I survey.
Thank
I
you. Yes.
And is Christina still on? Christina, do you have any idea? I'm looking to see if I think Christina's not on anymore. I could get you that number. Do you have the personal development source? What is your name?
Sorry, Bridget. I didn't go through and change it.
No worries, Bridget. We can look into that. I know that we've received a lot of responses, but I know that we extended it, which means we were probably still looking for more. So, but
You just wanted to use that to try and help motivate the chapter to be like, no, you're really needed. Come on.
yes. Yes. I apologize. I don't have that number. They were talking, but we talked about it on a team call, but I don't have it stuck in my head.
There was also a question about where you start building the relationships, which Bailey gave a lovely response to, but it made another potential question dawn in my head, which is, where do we start with looking for the support? And I think it's important that members know and understand, or people who are interested in advocating know and understand, that if it's federal legislation, we go to DC with it, but the chapters may mirror exactly what DC does in their states for state and local legislation. So you just keep taking the same principles, but moving them, I don't want to say up or down, to the appropriate point.
right.
So if it's state legislation that you're concerned about, like Columbus and Cincinnati, I think we're banding together about a particular piece of legislation in Ohio, then you're going to your state house and your state senate, as opposed to looking for all your checkpoints. The litmus test goes through at the state level as opposed to at the federal level. Just for a point of clarification.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Sandy. Because I did not. And that was beautifully said. Rachel, did you have something?
Yeah, I just had a question about, I know when we're doing specific legislation and the litmus test, but do we ever advocate within, say, like an omnibus or a budget kind of, things to keep funding or not, that kind of thing?
We do. We
Okay.
do. That, and in those instances when it's, I was actually on a call prior to this talking to a partner about this. When it's things that happen, kind of ad hoc, I would say, just for lack of a better word, that would be something that we would bring to the National Advocacy Committee to look at, and kind of from what we can do, because things that happen in an omnibus or things that are happening in a CR where you're not going to necessarily have the time to build that coalition, what we can do and what we can find out as much as we can as part of the litmus test, we would do, and then we would take it to the board. So it's not L in a silo deciding that NAWBO is going to run with something. Definitely not. There would still be a process where there would be several levels reviewing. So it's not something that NAWBO just takes lightly and is like, we want to support this, and willy-nilly we support it.
So I've got a quick question on that.
Mhm.
So they take it to the board. I'm thinking that if we're doing it locally, we take it to our leadership team, or is it that we're taking, I'm thinking federal, obviously, that litmus test question and our decision about it to the national board?
If it is a local state issue that you're talking about, you would take it to your leadership team or board, depending on what type of chapter. If it is a national issue, you would bring it to me, and then I would work on it on your behalf.
Perfect. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. What else we got? Everybody's thinking about Thanksgiving turkey. It's only Tuesday.
Well, Al, there was so much information to digest, and I'm used to working with this stuff. And so I'll look very forward to the webinar on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lisa, Dr. Jan, did y'all have anything that you wanted to share before? I mean, I love to give people time back. That makes me think I'm really efficient.
I think the only thing I'll jump in and say is in 20 minutes, if anybody wants to munch on their sandwich or drink their breakfast tea and join me on a Facebook Live, we're going to do a really quick 5 to 10 minutes Facebook Live on the NAWBO page.
Oh, awesome. I'm so glad you told us.
Can you throw that link into the chat?
Sure, I'll do my best. Absolutely.
Thank you, Elle, for presenting. It was a wonderful series that you put together. And, you know, I was looking at the Leadership Academy website, or on our website. And yeah, I'm excited about our keynote speaker, Amanda Brinkman. And she, you know, she did this Small Business Revolution series on TV with Robert Herjavec, I think, one of the Shark Tank gentlemen. And I just want to make sure people know that the Leadership Academy is not just for the chapter leaders. Anyone's invited. And so spread the word. Early bird registration ends December 20th. So let's all get signed up and meet again in January in Charlotte. It's going to be wonderful. But thank you so much for putting this all together, Elle. I know it was a lot of work on your part. We're lucky to have you.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it. Hillary, did you have a question?
I do. It just popped into my mind. So sorry for the
great.
delay, but thank you for this. And I have a question about the coalition building aspect of things. And I'm thinking of, you know, how this might apply at the city and state level for us as well. Is there any sort of like guidelines or litmus test for who you build coalition with, or like, does it have to be a business group that you're working with?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I would think that you would use your best judgment on looking at organizations and the values of those organizations and making sure that the values align. And maybe do a little bit of a social media press dive. But no, it does not have to be a business organization, because we know that there are we have a lot of partners that are partners and are companies that their values and vision for women business owners aligns with what we do. And that's why we work with them. And I would put that under the same, you know, line of coalition building that I would a small business organization.
Okay, great.
I will happily give everyone 15 minutes back, but I did want to remind you that we will not be having a call next month. During the winter holiday season. We will not be having a call next month, but we will be returning in January. So I will be sending out that information, and I hope everyone has a lovely start to the new year, has a lovely holiday season. No matter what you celebrate, we celebrate you, and look forward to another great year.
Elle, can I just ask one more question?
Sure.
So when we think about partners and it's a company, do we apply a litmus test to that as well?
NAWBO doesn't just partner with anyone. We truly look at the values of the company and look at what their vision is and how they're going to support women business owners. And I would hope that each chapter would do the same.
Thanks.
Is that helpful?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the litmus test wouldn't necessarily work with that, because it kind of doesn't work. It wouldn't fit our Excel spreadsheet. However, we do look at the partner and look at their values and speak with their staff. You know, there's a lot of work that we do ahead of just signing a partnership agreement.
And Elle, I would just remind people that if they have a question about it, to bring it to you. And so again, we're not making individual, even chapter decisions necessarily about something national, but that people can come to the national committee and we can say, hey, do you have any experience with such and such group, or that kind of thing, so that we can all, you know, speak with as much one voice as possible.
That's great, Rachel. Thank you. Awesome. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Have a wonderful
you.
day.
Thank
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving, Elle. Thank you.